Hello and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, the Palestinian president wages an international campaign for peace. Hamas is linked to the BDS movement, and a little Israeli girl makes a historical discovery just in time for Passover. I'm Natasha Kirchuk here with the latest news in Israel. It's been 2 days since a fatal bus bombing in Jerusalem, and Israelis are still reeling from the attack. Jerusalem residents are on edge, and many fear a new era of bus bombings is just around the corner, one that may be similar to the second Palestinian Intifada.
This morning, like everybody else in Jerusalem, I'm afraid. The buses aren't safe again. There's a problem. But I think this is common to me and to my Arab neighbors as well. We're all afraid. And hopefully the things will be better. We shouldn't give extremists on both sides opportunity to rule our lives, and we can't cave to terrorism on both sides. We try to build a common life of Jews and Arabs in this city.
Monday's bus bombing injured 21 people, leaving 16 with physical wounds and another 5 people with shock. The bombing occurred on an empty number 12 bus in Jerusalem, on Moshe Baram Street in the Talpiot neighborhood. The bus exploded in flames, which caught another nearby bus and a private vehicle on fire. In a turn of events, police believe one of the men who was critically injured is a terrorist who was carrying the bomb. No one has claimed responsibility for the attack, but the Hamas and Islamic Jihad terror groups have both praised the bombing. Suicide bombings on Israeli buses were a hallmark of the second Palestinian Intifada from 2000 to 2005, but have rarely taken place since then. The latest wave of violence in Israel began last October, and it's taken a different form, with Palestinians carrying out more lone wolf stabbing, car ramming, and gun attacks. Israelis are still braced for another escalation in violence.
It was more explosions before in Jerusalem, and it has been less the last years, and I think it's bad that it's happening again, and it makes me more reserved.
In Monday's bombing, investigators determined that a small explosive device was set off at the back of one of the buses. Hamas says the attack is a natural reaction to Israeli desecration of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which Israel has continued to deny. Israel and Jordan have been working on a plan to set up security cameras at the Temple Mount, but now Jordan has backtracked on the agreement. Israeli officials are furious, saying they believe in transparency and that cameras are the best way to prove who's responsible for the violence at the site. A series of violent clashes between the Israeli police and Palestinian rioters are said to have ignited the latest wave of violence in Israel, and Israeli security forces are hard at work to stop what many have referred to as the third Palestinian Intifada in the Jewish state. Israel has just revealed that it's building a new barrier along the border of Gaza to give Israeli residents more security against terror attacks. The barrier will take about 2 years to complete, and it's designed to deal with threats above and below ground to prevent terrorists from infiltrating Israel. The Palestinian president is meeting with the German and Russian heads of state, and it looks like he's trying to turn the tables on Israel. Russian leader Vladimir Putin has now vowed to support Palestinian efforts to establish peace talks with the Jewish state. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas is meeting with the Russian president and is continuing to push for an international conference on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The move appears to be an attempt to turn the tables on Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, who's repeatedly called for bilateral negotiations and cast Abbas as an unwilling partner in the peace process.
طبعا هذه القضية في منتهى الأهمية. تعلمون أننا ذهبنا في الماضي إلى مؤتمر أنابوليس، وبعد أنابوليس اتفقنا على أن يكون المؤتمر الثاني في موسكو، لكن تعطلت هذه القضية طويلا، والآن دعت فرنسا إلى المؤتمر الدولي نريد أن نناقش تفاصيله.
Putin is meeting with Netanyahu tomorrow, but he has also told Abbas that Russia is committed to helping push forward the peace process.
И, безусловно, будем поддерживать ваши усилия, господин президент, направленные на то, чтобы активизировать все, что необходимо для выхода на конструктивный диалог.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel is also meeting with the Palestinian president tomorrow. There haven't been any peace talks between Israel and the Palestinians since the American-led initiative, which fell apart in the spring of 2014. Merkel says Germany is now turning to the French-led initiative to hold an international conference on the Middle East conflict, and says any new efforts need to involve key international players. Abbas has consistently supported the idea of multilateral negotiations and is in support of the French initiative.
وبهذه المناسبة فإنني أعبر عن عميق التقدير للشعب الألماني الصديق ولحكومتكم الموقرة على مواقف الدعم والمساندة المادية والمعنوية التي تقفونها إلى جانبنا من أجل تمكين شعبنا من بناء مؤسساته الوطنية وإرساء أسس بنية متينة لدولته القادمة.
Israel, on the other hand, has repeatedly called for renewed bilateral negotiations, and Netanyahu recently said he would clear his schedule if Abbas wanted to meet with him. Abbas hasn't taken him up on the offer, and Netanyahu says Abbas is failing to really push for peace while his organization continues to incite violence against Israelis in the wave of terror that has killed 28 Israelis and 2 U.S. citizens. Thousands of Israelis gathered last night to show their support for an Israeli soldier who shot a terrorist in Hebron, but organizers say they were expecting a lot more people to show up. Surgeon Elor Azaria was charged this week with manslaughter for killing a wounded terrorist in Hebron. The 19-year-old Israeli soldier was filmed shooting Abdul Fattah al-Sharif, who had stabbed another soldier in Hebron but was already disarmed and lying on the ground. Many Israelis are outraged that Azaria is being charged, and his supporters gathered last night for a rally in Tel Aviv. About 2,000 people showed up. The rally was organized by the soldier's family and former Knesset member Sharon Gal, and it criticized political leaders, the defense establishment, and the army for allegedly abandoning the soldier when he was jailed and charged with the killing. Protesters claim Azaria is a hero and are criticizing the defense minister for speaking out against the soldier's actions.
When we have the leaders of the country and the army, starting from the prime minister to the minister of defense and the chief of staff, basically already trying the young man before we knew even all the details. But basically they set the tone, they climb on a big tree, tall tree, and they don't know how to get down of it. So now they have to try him and make a symbol out of him.
Prime Minister Netanyahu spoke out about the incident just hours before the rally, saying he too has a son in the army and that Israel backs its soldiers. The Israeli leader is calling on the public to lower their voice and allow the military justice system to decide on the soldier's fate.
כאבא של חייל וכראש ממשלה, אני מבקש לומר שוב, צבא ההגנה לישראל מגבה את חייליו. אני משוכנע שבחינת האירוע בחברון תעשה בשיקול דעת ובאחריות. בהכירי את מערכת המשפט הצבאית, אני בטוח שבית הדין יתחשב בכל נסיבות המקרה. החיילים שלנו אינם רוצחים, הם פועלים נגד רוצחים. ואני מקווה שתימצא הדרך לאזן בין המעשה לבין ההקשר הכולל של האירוע. ובינתיים אני מציע לכולם להנמיך את הלהבות.
Azaria is now awaiting trial. Last month, an opinion poll found that 57% of Israelis think he should have never been arrested, and almost 60,000 people have signed an online petition demanding that he should get an award for his heroism. If convicted, Azaria could face a jail term of up to 20 years. It may seem unlikely that there's a connection between Hamas terrorists and the BDS movement. Yet according to a testimony heard in Congress, there actually is one. A leading expert says Hamas supporters are leading the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. Jonathan Schanzer is a former terror finance analyst for the U.S. Treasury, who's now an analyst for the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Schanzer told the House Committee of Foreign Affairs that there's a network of ex-Hamas fundraisers who are now in the leadership of the BDS movement. The research tracked employees of 3 organizations that were implicated by the federal government for having financed Hamas terrorism. The biggest culprit was a Holy Land Foundation, which raised about $12 million for Hamas. 7 key employees of the now defunct groups are associated with the Illinois-based American Muslims for Palestine, which is a leading BDS group in the United States. The group sponsors the anti-Israel campus network known as Students for Justice in Palestine, which backs Campus Israel Apartheid Week events. Every day we report on what politicians have to say about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But have you ever wondered what people on the street have to say? Now there's a way to find out. The Ask Project is on a mission to share the viewpoints and feelings of locals in the region. Check it out.
بتقدر تحكي قدام الكاميرا إنه أنا بديل الفلسطينية اللي بقتلوا إسرائيليين أبرياء. لا. No. Why?
إنه إحنا أصحاب هاي الأرض.
We are the owners of the land.
إحنا أصحاب هاي الأرض. هم اللي أجوا عندنا مش إحنا اللي أجينا عندنا.
They came to our land, not we came to.
Can she look at the camera and say, I condemn? I did this to Israelis who couldn't do it. I condemn. Can she do it?
تقدر تدينا قدام الكاميرا ولا لا؟ I don't know.
No?
أنا ما بدين الفلسطينيين وما بطلع على الكاميرا بدين الفلسطينيين لأن إحنا أصحاب الحق وهدوك الإسرائيليين هم المحتلين عندنا وإحنا أصحاب قضية وإحنا هاي أرضنا وهاي بلدنا وهاي حكومتنا وهاي
I don't condemn Palestinians because we have the right in this land and they are the one who are occupying it.
So even to kill women and old people?
حتى لو الفلسطينيين قتلوا نساء وشيوخ.
الفلسطينيين ما بيقتلوا شيوخ ونساء هيك من دون ولا شيء. هذا الشيء اللي بيقتلوا النساء اللي هم اليهود اللي بيقتلوا النساء وكل شيء واضح الكل بيشوف هذا الشيء.
And all people, the Israelis do that.
Corey Gilschuster joins us from the Ask Project. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
So what is the Ask Project? Tell us about this.
The Ask Project, the idea behind it is to find out what people, the regular people, Israelis and Palestinians, actually think about issues that have to do usually with the conflict or the culture. So people send me in questions from all over the world. I choose the questions and then I go out to the street and I ask average people, random people completely, to answer the questions themselves.
How did you come up with the idea for this? How did you get started? That's the big question here.
I got tired of being one of those internet warriors, you know, not necessarily on behalf of Israel, but just trying to show what the truth of what at least Israelis think, because Palestinians I didn't know as well. And I found that most people outside of Israel have this very strange view or a skewed view because they listen to propaganda mostly. And I wanted to show them what the truth is because I come from a conflict resolution background, and you can't solve a conflict unless you actually know what it's about.
So let's talk a little bit about the questions. Where do you get these questions from? You said people send them in, correct?
Yeah, I have an email address. People write me on Facebook any way that they can, and they send them in from all over the world. I get them from the Arab world, Muslim worlds, Western worlds, Israel, everywhere.
How do you make the selection?
I kind of scan through them based on what I think is interesting. When I see that there's a lot of people asking a very similar question, then I'll try to focus on that as well.
Right. So what has the response been like so far? You know, people who are watching your videos, do they feel that they're getting a different perspective of this region?
Okay, this might be just my perception. A lot of people who already have a very a difficult view of Israel or Palestinians in some way, I don't think it changes their mind. What I do get is a lot of emails from around the world, from the Arab world, from the Jewish world, people who were a little more on the fence, people who had a feeling that they were being manipulated in some way, and they generally thank me for showing them something else, something that's different and feels more real.
Absolutely. So you have a full-time job, but you do this on the side, and you do it around the country, right? This isn't only in Tel Aviv.
That's right. I try to get everywhere I can, you know, depending on how much money I have, because this is totally self-funded. I do have
that was my next question for you.
I do have a GoFundMe site, so anyone who wants to donate, please do, because it allows me to go further. And I go to the West Bank at least once a month to ask these questions.
This is so interesting. You know, I actually used to watch these videos, and I've wanted to go out there and do that myself. And, you know, in your opinion, what has surprised you the most about the answers that you've gotten from both Palestinians and Israelis?
Well, each group is different. For me, this is my perception, and each person sees different things in the videos that they watch. I was surprised at the level of hate and anger on the Palestinian side. That really did surprise me. I could understand why they're angry, but the level, the intensity of the hate really surprised me. On the Israeli side, I think it's the apathy that surprises me more. I obviously knew more about Israeli society. I've lived here for 20-something years, so that it's nothing people say is a complete shock. But there is an apathy about the conflict in general, just not really caring. Okay, so it happens. I would say that probably surprised me most of all.
Do you ever feel in danger from doing this work?
In Israel, no, not at all. In Palestinian areas, yeah, sometimes. We've only really been, actually most people are very nice and they're very, I'm Canadian, so I tell people I'm Canadian. It's just easier for me in the translator.
This is the transition, yeah.
Yeah. There are a few people who have threatened us for various reasons along the way. So yeah, of course, it's intimidating. I don't know what'll happen. I could be seen as some sort of threat to them, which I'm not. I'm really just there asking questions, but potentially, yes, I do feel a little bit threatened sometimes.
So the final question is, how long will this go on? Are you going to continue doing this?
Yeah, I'll just keep doing this, as long as there are questions, as long as I have a passion to go out there and know, because really that's what it's about. I really want to know what people think about various issues, so I'll keep doing it.
Well, you're doing a great job, and thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks so much.
Passover has a whole new meaning for a little Israeli girl who made an exciting historical discovery in Jerusalem. 12-year-old Nishma Spielman has found an ancient Egyptian amulet, and archaeologists say it's over 3,000 years old. With Passover just a few days away, it's safe to say her discovery is more timely than ever. Little Nishma recently participated in the Temple Mount Sifting Project, which allows volunteers to sort through tons of earth that was illegally discarded from the Temple Mount in 1999. While Nishma was searching through the dirt from the holy site, she discovered an amulet bearing the name of a pharaoh. The pharaoh turns out to be Thutmose III from Egypt's 18th dynasty, and he reigned between 1479 and 1425 BCE. Thutmose III is known as one of the most prominent pharaohs in Egypt's new kingdom, and he's credited with establishing the Egyptian imperial province in Canaan. The pharaoh was certainly successful, and he even referred to himself as the one who has subdued 1,000 cities. The small amulet with his name that Nishma discovered is in the shape of a pendant, and it bears the symbol of an eye and a cobra. Egyptian scarabs bearing Thutmose III's name have been discovered in Jerusalem, but this is the first time that his name has been found adorned on an amulet. The discovery is a symbolic one too, since Passover is just a few days away. Archaeologists say the find is a greeting from the ancient bittersweet past, and 12-year-old Nishma says Passover will take on a whole new meaning for her this year. And now for our Hebrew word of the day. Passover is just around the corner, which means it's time for the Jewish people to say goodbye to bread. So naturally, today's word is lechem, which means bread in Hebrew. As you can imagine, when the Jews were leaving Egypt, they were in a pretty big hurry, and they didn't have the time to let their bread rise. Since then, Jews around the world have observed Passover by avoiding eating anything with leaven throughout the holidays. Bottom line is, that means no lechem. So when you stop eating lechem, it's like a symbolic way of removing the puffiness or arrogance and pride from your soul. Lechem, like most Hebrew words, is also used in slang. If you're complaining about your hardships to an Israeli friend, don't get offended if he brushes you off and says, "Kashe yesh rak belechem," or "only bread is hard." Take the Israeli comment with a grain of salt. After all, when you think back to the real hardships the Jews faced in ancient Egypt, it's hard not to appreciate the lechem you have on your plate, even if it is a little hard. Let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Israelis are feeling the heat. Thursday is expected to be mostly sunny with a high of 81 degrees. The sun should stay out throughout Friday, but the temperature will drop down to a pleasant 77. All right, everybody, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.76 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to check out our evening update every night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you tonight.